He was already mopping the marble floor when they stepped over him. Two women in heels too high for comfort, a man in a pressed cobalt suit, and someone loudly on a Bluetooth headset, all brushing past him without a glance. One even spilled her coffee near his bucket without saying a word, muttering something about hiring better help. The badge on his shirt said Robert, and that's all anyone ever bothered to read. Not Dr. Robert E. Maynard, not founder, emeritus chair, and majority shareholder of Maynard North Holdings LLC. Just Robert, the janitor. Grey beard, slow gait, and too quiet for their liking. He listened as they talked about upcoming layoffs. "They're just warehouse temps," one said, digging in her purse. "Not like they have real roles." Another snorted. "Or real degrees." He kept cleaning. "Are you new here?" she asked. He paused. "Nah, been here longer than anyone knows." She frowned, trying to place him. "Do you work in maintenance?" "Sometimes," he said. "Sometimes I just listen." She didn't understand. Not yet. But she would. Everyone would. Soon. The Monday meeting started with laughter. The hollow kind. Inside conference room 4B, a row of black leather chairs circled a glass table like a crown on an empty head. Suits shuffled in, arms full of glossy printouts and coffee sleeves. PowerPoint decks were already projected onto the wall. Q2 profit recovery, slashes, streamlines, and structural reset. They called it a reset. Robert had called it family once. "Where's that janitor again?" someone muttered. "The trash is still full." "I told you," said Jenna, VP of Brand Strategy, flapping her hands. "They're union now. Can't even ask them to clear a plate without HR throwing a fit." "Ridiculous," said Grant, the young COO. "They're lucky to even be working in a building like this." Robert watched from just outside the glass, quietly replacing the liner in a side trash bin. They never paused. "We need optics," Grant said, pinching his brow. "Fire bottom, celebrate top, push that narrative." Jenna smirked. "Spin it like a phoenix rising." Robert tilted his head, folding the old trash liner into itself as if it were something precious. Behind him, a familiar voice spoke. "You're still here?" It was Marjorie, the executive assistant. She gave him a sideways glance like he was a coffee stain. "We've got guests arriving, so maybe use the back elevators. The ones the staff use." He looked at her, steady. "Thank you, Ms. Jacobs," he said calmly, "but I believe I'll take the main one today." She blinked. "Do you even have clearance for—" The elevator dinged behind him. He stepped in. The doors slid closed before she could finish her sentence. By the time Robert reached the 31st floor, the penthouse level, the tone shifted. No one up here was ever rude. They were too old to be cocky, too rich to be reckless. Here the founder's name still echoed, but even now none of the men at the long conference table recognized Robert without his tailored suit or his nameplate. "New maintenance head?" someone whispered to the assistant. "No idea," she said under her breath, "but he's early. The board isn't due for—" The door opened again. "Ladies and gentlemen," the assistant announced nervously, "Dr. Robert Maynard is here." Every back straightened, every jaw clenched, and Robert, he just smiled, slow and knowing, as he stepped past them and laid the gold key on the center of the table. "I believe," he said gently, "this is still my house." The room fell silent. And all across the floors below, the ones who laughed, the ones who scoffed, the ones who asked him to use the back door, had no idea that in the next 48 hours their fates would rest in the hands of the man they never once bothered to see. Nobody reached for the gold key. It sat in the center of the boardroom table like a challenge or a crown. The light from the penthouse windows danced across its edges, catching the Maynard Holdings logo etched faintly at the base. Most in the room hadn't seen that key in over 20 years. Some had only heard whispers. A silence stretched too long. Then, "Dr. Maynard," stammered Harold Green, CFO since 2015. We didn't expect—" "You didn't expect me to come home," Robert said evenly, taking the head seat. He sat without flinching. He didn't need volume, he had history. "I founded this company before any of you had your first title," he said. "I laid wire in these walls, took out a second mortgage to make payroll, and swept floors when the cleaning service didn't show." He glanced around. "So yes, I've done maintenance and finance and front desk and strategy. I know every part of this company because I built it." Nobody dared look him in the eye. "You all sit up here now," he continued, "talking about layoffs like it's trimming hedges, saying things like optics and Phoenix, forgetting that the only reason you're flying at all is because someone like me bled into the soil first." A throat cleared at the far end. It was Jenna, carefully composed, her fingers laced tight. "With all due respect, Dr. Maynard, we didn't know you were conducting oversight. Had we been informed, we'd have—" Robert cut her off with one quiet look. "I didn't come here to be informed, Jenna." He leaned forward, voice dropping to something that felt like thunder in velvet. "I came here to witness." He pulled a folded paper from his inner coat pocket and laid it next to the key. It was the original charter agreement, dated and notarized with his full name signed in thick, inky strokes. The room seemed to freeze. Robert took his time. "I gave up my voting seat 10 years ago. I let you run, I let you rebrand, cut departments, move headquarters. I watched quietly. Until last quarter," he tapped the key. "Until I saw what you'd done to the warehouse teams, the union workers, the janitors." His gaze sharpened. "The people who built this company just like I did. From the bottom." Someone mumbled. "They were a cost center." "No," Robert said, his voice suddenly steel. "They were the foundation." He stood. "And I've decided it's time to rebuild." On the warehouse floor, people started whispering. Something was happening upstairs. The executive wing had gone strangely quiet. No marching heels, no barking phones, no echo of fake laughs. Word was spreading fast that an old man in overalls had walked into the penthouse boardroom, and they let him sit down. None of the interns could confirm who he was. But Rosie from payroll swore she saw Jenna running. into legal. That had never happened before. Back on the 31st floor, the silence had turned into low-level panic. "I'm sorry, but you can't just reinstate executive control without—" Harold blurted again, flipping through pages like the rules might rearrange themselves. Robert leaned back, slow and patient. He didn't flinch at the chaos. He'd seen worse, when the company nearly folded in '93, when he mortgaged his mother's home just to make payroll for staff who now wouldn't recognize his face in a crowd. Clause 17 allows for temporary emergency control by the founder, Robert repeated, when ethical violations, labor abuses, or company identity crises arise. He tapped the charter again. "You called this a reset. I call it a rot." Jenna tried to regain composure. Dr. Maynard respectfully. "These are modern business realities. Shareholders demand efficiency. We can't just throw money at unskilled—" "How you mean people?" Robert said, flat and direct. "You mean the workers who polish your glass and scrape gum off your marble and unlock the doors before sunrise?" He stood again, not angry, just firm, steady like the beam in a storm. "Your bonuses went up, their hours got slashed." He looked to the corner where the HR director sat stone-faced. "Your diversity reports are copy-pasted from last year. You host fake workshops. But no one in this room has sat in the cafeteria in 5 years." That one hit. A few glanced down. "I have," Robert said, "for the last 2 months. I've been mopping your floors and cleaning your trash and listening. And what I've heard," he paused, "would embarrass your mothers." No one moved. "You've forgotten who this place is for, so let me remind you." He pulled out another paper. This one stamped and signed that very morning. "Effective immediately. Layoffs are suspended. Union contracts will be honored. Janitorial and custodial staff will receive full back pay for hours illegally cut. And Jenna, Grant, your roles are being placed under formal review." Jenna's mouth opened, but no sound came. Robert walked to the window, the one that overlooked the city he once walked through in worn-out shoes, pockets light, soul heavy with hope. "I started this company with a broom in one hand and a blueprint in the other," he said softly. "I'm not here for nostalgia. I'm here for justice." Behind him, the boardroom door creaked open. It was the intern, the same one he helped at the vending machine. She stood awkwardly, holding a folder. Sorry to interrupt, but someone said you'd want these. Employee complaints filed over the last 6 months. Most never reviewed." Robert took the folder, flipped it open. His face didn't change, but his grip tightened just slightly. "Thank you, sweetheart," he said. "What's your name?" "Amari." He nodded once. "Stay close, Amari. We're going to need people like you." The folder Amari handed over was thick. Slipped inside were pages curled at the corners, many handwritten, some crumpled like they'd been tossed and retrieved. There were timestamps, attachments, photos, even printouts of emails that had mysteriously gone missing from the official complaint system. Harassment, unpaid overtime, racial slurs in the warehouse, a security guard fired for reporting mold in the break room, one cleaner let go after refusing to bleach a marble floor with vinegar because it would ruin the finish. "Too many complaints," the last note said in red pen. "Attitude problem." Robert closed the folder quietly and set it down like it burned. Across the table, the executive stared, trying to guess if this was salvageable. They bought in once it was safe, once the risk was gone, once someone else had done the digging and laying and brick pouring. "You ever laid brick, Grant?" The man swallowed. No, sir. Robert nodded. Didn't think so. He stepped around the table again, hand resting on the folder like a promise. I built this from sweat, from walking office to office in hand-me-down suits while banks slammed doors in my face. I slept in the back of our first warehouse during the 2001 recession so I wouldn't have to lay off one employee. His voice dropped lower. And you've been here 3 years and already gutted the soul out of the place. Grant flushed. This is corporate evolution. You can't make business decisions with emotion. You call it emotion, Robert said. I call it humanity. He turned toward Amari. Pull the names, every complaint, every ignored voice. I want a list of all affected staff by the end of the day. Amari blinked. All of them? Yes. Then cross-reference those names with promotions, bonuses, disciplinary actions, and terminations. I want to see how deep this goes. Her voice steadied. You got it, sir. And Amari, he added. You're head of internal oversight now. Effective immediately. The room gasped. Jenna sat forward. She's an intern. So was I once, Robert replied. But she's unqualified. According to who? The people who didn't see me cleaning under their shoes, or the people who threw away reports like trash? He turned back to Amari and smiled. You're the only one who looked me in the eye. A quiet buzz hummed under the surface now, the sound of power beginning to shift. Robert walked toward the door but paused one last time. I'm not here to embarrass anyone. I'm here to remind you of what this place was, of what it could still be. Either help me fix it. He glanced at the folder again, or I'll clear you out like yesterday's trash. And with that, the janitor walked out, and this time, no one dared call him anything less than sir. The elevator doors closed behind Robert like a curtain on Act 1. He didn't rush. He never did. He knew the silence he left in that boardroom would echo longer than any speech could. That silence was doing its work now, burrowing into the skulls of people who thought power always had to be loud. Back on the third floor, HR scrambled. Desks were cleared. Emails were opened and then immediately deleted. Jenna's assistant cried quietly behind a frosted glass door while shredding complaint summaries that had been hidden for months. But it was too late. The servers had already been pulled. Amari, with the new badge clipped to her lanyard, and a confidence still catching up to her title, sat at Robert's old corner desk with 3 monitors blinking open. It had reactivated dormant admin permissions tied to his name, and now everything flowed to her. She clicked a folder labeled Ethics Freezer and exhaled slowly. There were 413 documents inside. Meanwhile, Robert walked the halls like a ghost no one could ignore anymore. He passed the same young execs who used to joke that he smelled like pine sol. Now they moved aside, offering tight smiles and avoiding his gaze. The same receptionist who used to pretend not to see him now stood, hand on heart, like he was a visiting dignitary. He paused near the lunchroom. A janitor, maybe 19, earbuds dangling, hoodie stained, looked up from where he was scrubbing gum off the tile. The kid froze for a second, unsure if he should stand or speak. Robert crouched beside him. You got the rough spots already? He asked. The kid blinked. Yeah. They always leave gum under here, don't even notice. Robert nodded. They will soon. He stood again, patted the kid's shoulder once. Come by HR at 3 p.m, tell them I sent you. You're getting a raise. The kid stared after him like he'd just seen a myth walking upright. Back upstairs, panic bloomed. Jenna was pacing like a cat in a cage. Grant locked in his office. The board had gone eerily quiet. No formal statement, no denial. Just silence and sealed doors. One by one, anonymous emails from former staff began surfacing on an internal portal Amari created within hours. Each one started with the same line. You probably won't read this, but now someone was reading. By 2 p.m. a memo went out under Robert's name. It was simple. Barely 2 paragraphs. To all Maynard Holdings staff, this company was built on dignity, fairness, and work that means something. If you've ever felt ignored, mistreated, or erased, I see you, and I'm here now. We will rebuild this place the right way. Dr. Robert E. Maynard, founder, SEAL floor sweeper, still watching. The reply count hit 278 within 30 minutes, and then, as if the universe was on cue, the fire alarm tripped. Not the real one, the symbolic one, because the firm's biggest investor had just called an emergency shareholder meeting, and Jenna's name wasn't on the invite list. The conference room on the top floor wasn't on any public map. No placard, no keypad, just a sleek black door behind a nondescript glass wall guarded by silence. Only a handful of people even knew it existed. It was built years ago for high-level discretion, mergers, acquisitions, crisis containment, the kind of room where real decisions were made. At 4 p.m. sharp it lit up, and for the first time in years, the original founder took his seat at its head. Robert placed a plain manila folder on the table. Inside, a list of names. Not the ones who'd climbed over others to reach this floor, but the ones who'd been stepped on along the way. Warehouse managers with perfect attendance records and no benefits. Long-time employees laid off without warning while execs flew business class to retreats. Janitors fired for speaking up. Drivers ignored when they warned about faulty shipping protocols. The investor on the screen, dialed in from New York, raised an eyebrow. Dr. Maynard, I'll be honest, this wasn't what I expected when we funded your re-entry. Robert didn't flinch. I didn't return for a photo op, he said. I came back because this place lost its spine. The investor nodded slowly. And what do you propose? Robert slid the folder forward. A new executive slate, rooted in integrity, experience, equity. The screen flickered. You want to fire them all? I want to repurpose them, Robert said. Some of them have skills, but they need to remember where the ground is, what it feels like to earn a day's respect. The investor folded his hands. And what about shareholder confidence? I've been walking these halls for months, Robert said. Confidence is already gone, but trust can still be rebuilt. A long silence followed. Then the investor gave a single nod. Do what you came to do. Downstairs, Jenna stood frozen in the hallway, her ID no longer scanning. Her badge flashed red. No access, the screen read. She hit the panel again. Harder. No access. Is there a mistake? She asked the temp at the desk. The temp, a middle-aged black woman with silver braids and warm, amused eyes, just shrugged gently. I think the system's updating, she said, calm as a Sunday breeze. Maybe you should head down to HR. I hear they're re-evaluating leadership fit. Grant wasn't doing any better. Security had been waiting by his office, kind but firm. A quiet conversation, a formal packet, an invitation to reapply at a more operations-level appropriate role, pending behavioral review. He'd stormed out 5 minutes later. No one followed. Back in the hidden room, Amari entered silently with a tablet. Robert looked up and smiled at her. Updates? She nodded. Employee engagement up 40% since the memo. Anonymous tips tripled. We've got 3 former custodians applying for open supervisory roles. And someone named Rosie from payroll? She's been helping translate the old budget logs. Turns out she's a retired CPA. Robert chuckled. Of course she is. Amari sat beside him, not behind but beside, and handed over a note. Someone downstairs asked me to give you this, said you'd know what it meant. Robert opened it. It was a folded napkin. On it, one sentence written in neat block letters. Thank you for seeing us. No signature, just a coffee ring at the corner. Robert placed it next to the gold key on the table, the two symbols touching for the first time. He closed his eyes for a moment, not in weariness, but in peace. The building felt different now, not because of a renovation, not because of money, but because the air itself seemed to remember who had walked these halls. A week had passed since the quiet reshuffle. No firings, no press releases, just shifts, one by one, but in posture, in policy, in perspective. The staff elevator was no longer locked off. Executive lunch was now shared across departments. The janitorial staff had new uniforms with embroidered names, not numbers. And the gold key, it was gone from Robert's waist. Now it hung in the main lobby encased in glass, next to a black and white photo of a young man with tired eyes and calloused hands, standing outside the original warehouse in a patched-up coat. The plaque read, Dr. Robert E. Maynard, founder, builder, custodian, leader. On Friday, just before dusk, Robert stepped out of the penthouse for the last time. He wore no suit, no badge, just the same navy work shirt and clean slacks he'd worn that first Monday when no one recognized him. He rode the elevator down in silence. No one else inside, but when the doors opened on the first floor, if they were waiting, the janitorial team, the cafeteria staff, the drivers, warehouse leads, payroll, mailroom, even Rosie with her silver braids and that same quiet pride. And Amari standing at the front, holding something in her hand. I thought you should be the one to hang the final frame, she said. She turned the object around. It was a photo of the current team, the new leadership, including her, 3 warehouse veterans, the temp with the silver braids, and yes, even one former executive who had humbly reapplied and asked to learn. Robert's eyes glistened. You sure? He asked. Amari smiled. Your company. Your wall. He took the frame in both hands, walked slowly to the end of the hallway, where once only executive portraits lined the corridor. He found the empty space between 2 plaques and mounted it. Click. You all don't need me here anymore, he said, voice warm but steady. That's how I know I did it right this time. Rosie wiped her cheek.